look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin here at home as suspended Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has met with President Bola Tinubu at the president's Lagos residence on Tuesday, marking their first public known meeting since Fubara's suspension under emergency rule in March 2025. Photographs released by the State House show the two men smiling for the cameras, although details of their discussions have not been disclosed. President Tinubu declared a 6-month state of emergency in Rivers State on March 18, suspending Fubara, his deputy Ngozi Odu, and all elected members of the State Assembly. The move followed escalating political and security tensions in the oil-rich state. The suspension has been met with legal challenges and criticism from Fubara's opposition party, the PDP, and civil society groups, who argue that the action undermines democratic governance. Well, in a separate development, President Bola Tinubu has conferred the national honor of Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic, that's CFR, on billionaire Bill Gates, who is the co-founder of Microsoft and the founder of Bill Gates Foundation. The ceremony, which took place in his Lagos residence, was witnessed by chairman of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote. Now, the honor is in recognition of the long-standing contributions of Bill Gates to global health, education, and poverty reduction, with particular emphasis on his extensive partnerships with Nigeria. Now to security matters, as the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede, has temporarily relocated to Makurdi, the Benue State capital, due to the incessant killings of innocent villagers by herders and militia groups, the Nigerian army said yesterday. The service made this disclosure on its verified X handle. Unfortunately, members of a new terrorist group, Mahmuda, have reportedly killed 3 villagers in Duruma village, Baruten local government area, Kwara State, raising fears about a new security threat. Now, this was as operatives of the Joint Security Task Force have neutralized about 30 bandits in an operation which took place in Kuchi community of Munya local government of the Niger State on Monday. Oluyede had just returned from the Northeast Operational Theatres, where he had temporarily relocated following a minor setback in the Operation Hadinikai area of responsibility. Before departing Maiduguri, the Army Chief ordered commanding officers and troops of Operation Hadinikai to be ruthless towards terrorists to wind down the ongoing fight against insurgency, terrorism, and other emerging security threats in the country. Now to politics, as ex-governor of Rivers State, Rotimi Amaechi, yesterday took a swipe at the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT Nyesom Wike, implying that they're not on the same level and that he won't exchange words with, and I quote, children. Despite holding back consistently from talking politics or mentioning the name of Nyesom Wike during an interview on Arise TV's Prime Time with Charles Anyagolu, Amaechi stated that as someone who hired Wike as chief of staff, he could not trade insults with him in public. Earlier, launching a scathing attack on his longtime rival and predecessor, Wike had dismissed Amaechi's widely circulated remark when he said, "We're all hungry," which he made during his 60th birthday celebration last week, claiming the former Rivers governor is not hungry for food, but for political relevance. However, Amaechi also disputed Wike's imputation that he was instrumental to him, that's Amaechi, becoming governor, stressing that God, former Governor Peter Odili, the judiciary, and the Rivers State people were responsible for his election. So we continue to see this exchange going on between both former governors of Rivers State, as I guess the momentum continues to pick up in us trying to see where the chips will fall on the road to 2027.
So we have a buffet this morning of stories, but I want to start with a song this morning. Now our papa be this, so we not get any other. Now our papa be this, so Governor Fubara has gone to see his father, President Tinubu. He has no choice. Because in this game of politics, he's been brown-beaten. That will never, and I repeat, never, read my lips, mitigate the fact that we totally condemn a state of emergency by President Tinubu. And the cases are in court. We'd like to see the Supreme Court pronouncement on that. But the same Fubara that said all of a sudden the other day in a church service that his mind has left the place. He's going to visit President Tinubu. We are getting indication that things are getting better between them. For the first time in a long while, since all of this started, the tiff started, Wike is saying that he's my son. It's the people that are using him against me. Now, he's going to meet President Tinubu. Does this show you something that all politicians are the same? It's just about power. A lot of people thought that Fubara was going to stand his ground and say, what's the worst that will happen? You'll impeach me, but it will be on record. But it shows no, that Nigerian politicians are not that way. It's about what they can use and do with that power as at that point in time. But they forget that that power is transient. In the end, it will be standing for something. But you know, like they argue in Nigeria, who's standing for something help? In a country where there's poverty, there's hunger, a lot is going on. But we must still build a society that has values, that where people will have to stand for something. And if you feel being pushed around, it is only right that you stand for something. As regards the commendation for Bill Gates, I must have to commend President Tinubu and Bill Gates for that. Long overdue. We know the work Bill Gates did as regards polio immunization in this country with the Bill Gates Foundation, formerly the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, on other charitable works. And recently, he said in his giving pledge that the bulk of the 200 billion of his wealth will come to Africa. And Nigeria has benefited immensely from his philanthropy and charity. So it's a good one. It's a welcome commendation. It's a good one for our democracy. No, I say it's a good one for our democracy. It's a good one for our nation, celebrating philanthropists, that have helped greatly to achieve some milestones in Nigeria. But real quickly, as regards Oluyede, the military chief, I say at this point in time, it's time to support our military. They are inundated with a lot of challenges. There's been an upsurge in insecurity across the nation. We can't deny it. I'm happy that he has pushed the center of command out there to Benue. And we must also be careful in the reportage. Because I always see this reportage skewed towards its headsmen causing. There are also a lot of local militia and splinter groups causing the chaos in Benue. So this attempt to constantly heap it on headsmen, that's not the full story. That's the danger of a single story. We can only give the military the support and also against that new terrorist group in Kwara so we can rid Nigeria of insecurity so that we can have a lot more productivity. The truth is, as regards Amaechi reacting, I know there was going to be a reaction saying that I don't talk to children. No, I don't think Wike is a child. He's not a child. He worked for you as your employee, but saying you don't talk to children, no, it's not your child. You have a right to be able to respond to him and tell him off. Yes, but the question we'll ask is, when the going was good, were these two politicians at loggerheads? No. Today, interests do not align, and they are at loggerheads today. For me, is what is our own, we the people. It is how we can make these politicians accountable for what they ought to do for the people. These two politicians have had the chance to be able to lead Rivers State. What has been the transformation in the state with so much resource? I think that's a definitive matter for me here. Politicians will always fight. Tomorrow they might be on the same flank and speak in one tone. But what should be our priority should be what we can force them to do for the people.
Okay, let me start with former Governor, former Minister Rotimi Amaechi's interview on prime time at Rice News yesterday evening, conducted by Charles Aniagolu, veteran journalist. Now, the major issue that he raised, he tried to avoid talking about Wike, Nyesom Wike, who he dismissed as a child. He said, look, I don't talk to children. He was my employee. I gave him a job. I don't want to trade insults with him in public. But he raised very serious questions and said, look, I made Wike chief of staff. He worked for me. But that Wike was interested in being commissioner for finance. but that he didn't think it was a good idea to make him commissioner for finance, but that he made him, chief of staff so that he could supervise him. I'm quoting him verbatim now. So the innuendo in that regard, is well noted. It's a very mischievous innuendo. Why will a man be good as your chief of staff and he will not be good as a commissioner for finance? He didn't dwell on that heavily. He just said, look, nobody has ever helped him. And he addressed the issue that it is wrong for anybody, including Wike himself, he didn't mention his name, to go about saying he helped him to become governor. Instead, he gave the credit to God, Sir Peter Odili, the judiciary, and the people of Rivers State. So he brushed that issue aside. But I think, former Minister Amaechi raised some other more fundamental, more serious issues beyond their catfight in Rivers politics. He directly addressed the Tinubu administration, which was even the original basis of the attack by those who have been criticizing. One, he says that the Tinubu administration does not respect the rule of law. And he benchmarked that with the declaration on March 18 of a state of emergency in Rivers State. He thought that that was unnecessary. Again, a point of departure, in the conversation. Two, he asked President Tinubu to give a proper account of fuel subsidy savings. He asked for transparency and accountability. I don't think too many people can argue with him on the basis of transparency and accountability, even if President Tinubu has been very consistent in saying that, look, the fuel subsidy savings has made it possible for the states to get more money. And we have also looked at the issue and said, even the states, the various states in Nigeria, they've been able to pay off their debts because they had more earnings. But average Nigerians still raise the question about transparency and accountability. And that you cannot argue with. It's a legitimate thing to ask about. Now, three, he also raised the point about the coastal road. He was saying that the coastal road, while it may be useful, should not be a priority. That the president should focus on the East-West Highway, which links a substantial part of the East to the South-South. Four, he also said that, look, he thinks that the present INEC chairman, is like Maurice Iwu, who was INEC chairman before now. Well, of course, you may say that's partisan, that's political. But he was talking about the right of new political parties to be registered. So those are the more substantial issues that he raised. But I think that the point he raised about his former employee, it's also important. It's also something that those who are neck deep in the politics of Rivers State can look at. Now, second, Bill Gates was given commander of the Federal Republic. I think it is honor well deserved. Mr. Bill Gates, through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has been a partner of Nigeria, a strategic partner of Nigeria, and he has contributed a lot also to the healthcare, education, poverty alleviation project, not just in Nigeria, but also in other parts of Africa. So you could say he's a friend of Nigeria, he's a friend of Africa, he's a great exemplar in terms of philanthropy, in terms of how he uses his wealth to promote progressive causes, even if his critics do not think so. Some of his critics think that he's involved in tax evasion tactics. But the real truth is that the evidence of his commitment to development in Africa is real. Only earlier this week, he was speaking at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And there, he reminded everyone that, look, out of the 200 billion fortune that he has, fifth richest man in the world, that is going to give away between now and 2045, which is the sunset season for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he will give out 99% of that 200 billion. Even with that 200 billion being given out, Mr. Bill Gates will still remain a billionaire. So he reminds us that, look, philanthropy is very important. Something that Nigerian capitalists, that Tony Elumelu, Aliko Dangote, who was at the event yesterday, are also properly, invested in. Now, the thing is that he's in Nigeria to attend an event, Gateway Keepers event, which is about how you can use artificial intelligence to promote primary health care. Now, he spoke about that too when he was in Addis Ababa, and now he's in Nigeria to attend. So he's a global citizen in the real sense of it. The criticisms of those who have other ideas about him is immaterial to me. However, we would like to congratulate him, and I think that President Tinubu has done very well by identifying this friend of Nigeria, friend of Africa, and global citizen. Number 3, Governor Fubara visited President Tinubu yesterday. We have not seen the readout of that meeting, but at least this is the first major public meeting, known public meeting between Fubara and President Bola Tinubu. I would just like to say that Governor Fubara, who seemed to have shown a lot of penitence, he has shown that he's listening to the president. And I want to imagine that the reason he visited the president again is to remind the president that, please, he's now a good boy. He's not fighting anybody. He has even gone to beg Wike, the Lord and Master of River State politics. I think the president should just be magnanimous. The president should, having declared 6 months, state of emergency in River State, I imagine that part of their conversation will have been Fubara asking the president, please, I'm a good boy, I would like this thing to be lifted. And that the president, who is, in fact, a known Democrat and Federalist, after all, he was critical of the declaration of state of emergency before now in Ekiti State, before now in Plateau State. I think the president should not allow this to be, a blot on his credentials as a Democrat. Having declared that state of emergency, I think he should see good reason why he should lift that emergency, by September, so that the people of River State can enjoy the democracy that they voted for. I don't think that the president should wait any longer. Well, as for the Chief of Army Staff relocating to Benue State, well, good optics. He needs to restore confidence of the troops. We have been told that he's going to lead the operations. He has moved from Maiduguri, from Operation Hadinkai, where they had the Chief of Army Staff annual conference. Now he has gone to Benue. It's very good optics to see that he is leading the troops from the front, not sitting in air-conditioned office in Abuja. This is the mark of a true soldier. And I think that we should encourage General Oluyede. Soldiers like when their man leads from the front. During Ekomo, people were praising General Oluyede because they said General Oluyede will carry rifle and say, let's go. And they will follow him. This is the tradition of bravery, of gallantry, of chivalry that General Oluyede is teaching his troops. That in the long term, Nigeria should be made a safe place for all of us. And government is saying, we are trying. We are not abandoning you, whether in the Northeast or in the Benue State. I think it's a good signaling, good messaging, good effort on the part of the Chief of Army Staff.
Absolutely, and I certainly do hope that it will go a long way with regards to lifting the morale of our gallant soldiers who are doing their utmost best to combat the horrible insurgency, terrorism, the various groups that are cropping up, and to counter them and to keep us safe so that we can also, in every corner of the country, be able to sleep peacefully with both eyes closed and wake up. Children can go to school, men and women can go to work and earn their daily bread. So we do commend this. And even with some information being shared that there are also other spats of insecurity that are cropping up in the southeast, some incidents in Imo State and so forth, it's good to see that there is leadership, it is present, and they're showing the optics that say that we are in charge and we are in control of this situation. And on that note, I also came across a statement from the Chief of Defense Staff in looking for ways that we can mitigate this insecurity. He's proposing that maybe it's now time for Nigeria to fence our borders. Now, we know the conversation that has been happening over the past few days, especially given the geopolitical twist that the insecurity is now taking. We saw the comments from General Langley of AFRICOM, and of course, we can't exclude and we can't leave out the impact of the situation in the broader Sahel and how it impacts us here in Nigeria. So as a Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, spoke about maybe it's now time for us to fence our borders with Niger, with Cameroon, with Chad. And he gave some examples. He said, well, Pakistan and Afghanistan have done the same, Saudi Arabia and Iraq. He didn't mention this one, but of course we know the most famous one is US and Mexico with the border wall. Well, is this the strategy? I think we just need to be careful when pursuing some of these strategies because they have a mixed bag of results. Now, when you look at the outcomes, you find that a lot of the time, some of these people look for creative ways to bypass, and especially because a lot of what we're facing now is technologically driven as well. So a fence may stop one or two things. Fencing our borders may stop those who are not as shall I say, as boisterous in trying to cross into the country. But you'll find that some creative ways of bypassing that will still come up. Now, one of the issues for me that really stuck out is the fact that there's a political connotation to it because we know that on both sides of the borders, there are families, there are communities. So there's somewhat of an ethnic connotation to it that one needs to tread carefully with. It's all just a reminder that the insecurity we're dealing with has taken on quite a diverse and dynamic dimension. And it's time for us as citizens to stand together. When they speak of non-kinetic, for example, it's because we know that some of our own citizens are involved in aiding and facilitating for some of this insecurity. So non-kinetic is us speaking to our brothers and sisters and reminding them that we are fighting the enemy. We are all on one side. We're together in this. And these people are the enemy. So we continue to wish our forces all the best as we contend with the insecurity in various parts of the countries caused by various factors, both external and internal. Now to Rivers State. I do worry about the optics of an elected public official, a governor, being pictured with the president and the connotations that it brings about. Because it now begs the question, who does power really come from? Who do we need to beg and plead with when there are issues around the occupancy of our offices? And this takes me to the point that was made by the former governor Rotimi Amaechi yesterday when he said that it looks like there's state capture in all dimensions. He spoke about state capture of the electoral institutions because of the issues that they're facing trying to register a new party. So these may be some of the issues bedeviling the coalition as they now hunt for which vehicle they're going to use to try and take themselves to the 2027 election. But one has to ask, what is the challenge? Why is it so difficult for one to be able to register a political party? In his own estimation, he feels that the political will simply does not exist and that the man at the helm of affairs of INEC will simply not do it. Even if you meet all criteria, he says they will create bureaucratic red tape around the process so that it will be impossible to register a new political party. Now, these are issues that we need to look at closely. I believe most people celebrated when over 70 parties were struck off of the register because there were just too many parties around. But that doesn't negate the fact that there are legitimate parties that are supposed to also come and begin to participate in our politics because that's what makes for a healthy democracy. So one needs to balance these issues in a very fair way because, yes, as much as you don't want to overbloat the registry with too many political parties, there are genuine parties who fulfill all of the criteria who should be allowed to register. So I'm glad that he was able to give us a bit of a highlight into some of the challenges, although he did not express it overtly. But it's clear that these may be some of the challenges bedeviling the opposition coalition, as we've seen that recently they've been unable to come to a consensus about the real vehicle that will be used heading up to 2027. Now, I conclude with Bill Gates, and I congratulate him. Whether you're a fan or whether you're one of his critics, it's undoubtedly undoubted that the man has made impact, especially here in Africa and in Nigeria. Prior to his meeting with the president and the conferring of that great honor on him, he also met with Minister Bosun Tijani, and he made a commitment of $7.5 million US, which will go towards the Nigerian AI scaling hub. So he's showing that his commitment to connectivity, to AI, especially to AI as it's being used in healthcare, as it is being used in education, AI and connectivity as it is just being used by the broader population of Nigeria. So we've already seen that this particular Minister of Communications and Digital Economy has been doing his best to try and broaden, to try and create more internet penetration. But it's good to see that there are partners like Bill Gates who are ready to come in and assist in the scaling up of those efforts. So